It's a very special episode of The Next Fix because we have my dad, Wade Penley. Yes, I've spoken about him several times over the course of these episodes being recorded, and there he is. I just real quickly, I've reached out to him just recently. I'm coming into this conversation super ignorant about my own dad. So this is going to be a really fun one. I kind of know how he's going to answer this, but for everybody else, Dad, how are you doing today?
Doing better than average. I try to wake up with gratitude. So I always like to start out thinking I'm doing pretty good until the day tries to prove me wrong.
Sure, sure. And real quickly, like, well, how long have you been in recovery? How long have you been sober?
I first found recovery in 1980. That was four years after your birth. I went into treatment. Those first couple of attempts weren't successful. This time I will have 13 years this coming May.
Yeah.
Continuous that.
Well, now, as I ask everybody, we want to know when the train came off the tracks, and I truly don't know the answer to this. You know, what was it? Would you consider it before I was born? I mean, was there something maybe that happened? You know, what did it look like? When did the shit hit the fan? That's what we all want to
Well,
know.
the very first time I stood paralyzed working at a warehouse, and I stood paralyzed on the dock because the drugs weren't working anymore. I could not function. There was a supervisor who I really trusted and respected, and I went to him and I said, "Hey, I can't do this anymore." And he says, "Come on, we're going to get you some help." We had a company nurse, and she helped set things up, and I went in for an evaluation, and yeah, they found out I was a candidate. So that's when I first tasted recovery.
So that was in 1985. That's the 4 years after I was born, is what you're sure. But I suppose, like, you know, and this is a question people ask me, like, what does it look like for our family tree, or at least on your side, you know, for substance abuse? Like, did you, see it, or what was your experience before maybe the meltdown in 1985? You know, what was that exposure like?
Yeah, it seemed normal. I was living with my grandmother. She raised me pretty much, very much like your story too. You were raised by your grandma, so she ran a honky tonk and bootlegged, and that just seemed normal to me. Substance abuse
Now,
came at an early age.
Now, tell us what your interpretation or your definition of honky tonk and also bootleg. That's probably people don't
Okay,
know
the
what
honky
either one of those
tonk
things
was
are.
up, for example, up in Morgan County. They were doing strip mining back at the time, and she had a bar. It had the shuffleboard. They put the sawdust down on the floor, do a little boot scoop and boogie. The sheriff would be down at one end of the bar having his fill of, uh, you know, and so that was the honky tonk, just country music, got the jukebox going on, people dancing, playing shuffleboard, and things of that nature. And all the coal miners came there to drink.
Well, that sounds like a good time. You know, I imagine it got tumultuous. If that's like the family business, I feel like it could come with some pitfalls. I mean, were you aware of any, or like how did you
I was
how did
I
you
was about
perceive it?
8 years old with those memories of the Mountain View
Okay.
Inn, and then there was the cafe down in Midtown and a couple of different places. I didn't realize any pitfalls. I just thought it was, grandmother doing a little side hustle. You know, we'd get in the car and go to Oak Ridge. Roane County, where I grew up, was a dry county, and so there was no liquor. So grandmother saw
Sure.
a niche in the market, and she'd load me up in the car. We'd go to J.C. Penney's in Oak Ridge to buy some school pants. She would stop at the liquor store and load the trunk up and go and make her rounds down to the Midtown restaurant and Elmer Monroe's and all the little stab and shoot bars down in Roane County.
Stab and shoot bars. I mean, I gotta be honest, this is like cinematic and exciting. And it's so funny because my grandma, she took me to JC Penney quite often, but it was like to really buy socks or whatever. But All right. So now, well, when did you start participating?
I would steal grandmother's fall staff out of the refrigerator and go put it in the creek to keep it cold. So that was the first experience with the drinking, underage drinking. I was probably about 10, 11 years old.
10 years
Yeah.
old, you started drinking, and well, how did that go? Do you remember? Like, what was it, "This is awful," or I guess how did you, in your 10-year-old mind, how did you kind of think about that? Like, you just wanted to be like them, or was it like, how was it that you decided to do that, if you can remember?
Uh, Not exactly sure, but I do remember that when I became older, why I did it at 10 was probably just being mischievous. 10-year-old, 10,
Sure.
10, 11-year-old boy doing what 10, 11-year-old boys do. Hey, look what I got.
Right.
So the party started, and first time I ever smoked weed was when I was about 15, 14, 15 years old.
Okay.
Now, where that where that kicked in really well, being 14 years old, I discovered weed. Remarried, and I moved to Orlando and left a 4-year high school with 600 students in it to go to a 3-year high school with like 2,100 students. I, I was like a
Sure.
ball and tall
Was that
grad.
was that Oak Ridge? Was that Oak
The
Ridge?
first high school that I went to was Colonial High School out on 50.
That's funny because I was just there the other
Yeah,
day.
Colonial High School.
You're right, and I was speaking to students about not ending up like us, I guess. So, all right, so you transfer down to Orlando, or, relocate to Orlando, and this is, after you had now been exposed to weed and alcohol. You show up in Orlando, and then, I'm imagining at some point you you meet my mom.
Yeah, but leading up to that, down in Taft. Are you familiar with Taft?
Taft. Right, right,
Down
right, right.
south of Orlando, down below Sand Lake Road.
Uh-huh.
We we moved there. That's when I transferred to Oak Ridge High School there in Orlando, and there were some shady, scary looking characters, and I figured I would get in where I could fit in. So to counter my fear of some, just a large school, not knowing anybody, and these guys look pretty rough. I don't want to be one of their victims, so I'll just join the herd kind of mentality.
Right.
And
Sure.
so that got me off to a start. Now the weed was what I found comfort in because I didn't have to feel all those negative feelings. I didn't have to feel anything. I could just get high and just feel natural. It felt natural.
Interesting.
So
'Cause it gets tons of anxiety. I gotta be honest, like, when I smoke weed, like, it's not a relaxing experience, right? Like, the hallucinogenic effects, like, I get a little wild. My brain gets a little distorted, and anxiety definitely kinda, and I turn into a food zombie. So, like, it doesn't really, despite me smoking weed a very large portion of my life, it doesn't do that many great things to me, right? And so, but for you, it's giving you relaxation and a social lubricant, if you will, right? So the marijuana is lubricating your newfound social scene, and so it was working for you, as you'd said already, that it gave you comfort.
yeah, it worked for me. Worked for me real well. We moved in. We later moved across from Walker Junior High, and that's where I met your mother. There was a my stepfather was a truck driver, and we moved a lot. We moved several times while we were down there, and so we moved in across from junior high. And I was actually seeing one of your mom's girlfriends, and she called me up one day and says, "Hey, you want to go to River Country?" And I'm like, "Sure. Who all's going?" She said, "Just me and you." I'm like,
That's what my mom. So this is how my mom asked you
"Yes."
out.
And your
Wow.
grandma Geneva drove us. She had that old caddy. It was awesome.
Right.
And she took us to river country and dropped us off, and later came back and got us. And that's where it began.
That's where it began. That is wild. My mom called you and you were seeing one of her friends, which we won't get into. But and so everybody knows, and I've said it, now I'm pretty transparent about how my mother is capable of unethical behavior. I guess even at an early age, she just stomped all over her friend to get to you and took you to river country. Interesting. Okay. And so I have shared on this show several times that the both of you have clearly participated in, drugs and alcohol, and she still does, but you don't. But so this is where it began, right? And this is all very innocent, right? My grandma drives you to a date. That's awesome. And so then what did that look like? Now in my head, I've always wondered, like, were you just normal kids, or was the partying kind of, you know, the highlight of the show? What was it for you two kind of creating me?
Yeah, down your mom had several horses. Your Aunt Diane had a horse, and your mom had several horses. And so I got a horse, and there was a farm down on Sand Lake Road and Orange Blossom Trail. I'm not sure what's there now, but it used to be a pasture with a big barn. And that's where we boarded our horses. And we'd get a bottle of Southern Comfort and, and twist up a number and go out horseback riding, and just life on the farm, kind of laid back, kind of like an old John Denver
Sure.
song, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a good time. That was good times. It wasn't all
Yeah.
bad. That's for sure.
So so you and my mom, you're falling in love, you're on a farm. It all sounds like really awesome. You This is when you were 17, right? Or you were 18, she was
Let's
17.
see. 1977. Yeah, I was about 17, 18.
Right. And so I've always wanted to know because you got married, and then of course I came along and everything like that. But then of course you got split up and you got
Yeah.
divorced, and for the purpose of the show, like I guess did everything kind of crumble or fall apart as a result of you just being too young, or was it, I don't know, the drugs and the alcohol, or what would you say is the biggest reason for the two of you like splitting up?
We were the first of our peer group to get married and have a child. There was Jackie. I don't know if you ever met Jackie, one of her friends. I came home. I was on second shift down working at the warehouse, and I came home at lunch one time to get my checkbook to make a deposit and do some financial business. And so I come running into the apartment, and she's like, "Hey, me and Jackie want to go out to Joint in the Woods tonight." They had a band playing and all that. And I'm like, "Sure, yeah, whatever." You know, that's cool, because I was in a hurry. So they go out. Your grandmother watches you, and so she did the babysitting so she could go out. I come home, and she had asked me, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'll just probably come home and chill." I didn't think about anything. Then my buddy Phil said, "Hey, you want to go down to level 3?" That was on the corner of Sand Lake Road. It was across from the farm.
Okay.
So it's on the corner of Sand Lake Road and Orange Blossom Trail, and I went down there. So I put on a nice shirt, get dressed to go to the bar, and level 3 was really cool because downstairs they had like disco, and then on the second level it was kind of a neutral, just a hangout spot, and then on the third floor there was rock and roll and had live band. So me and my buddy Phil went to listen to the live band, and when I figured, well, I need to get back home at a decent hour. And when I got there, I opened up the door to the apartment, and there was your mom and a couple of her girlfriends. And I said, "Where in the hell have you been?" And because I was dressed nice. So it was kind of like accusing me, that I was stepping out. And I said, "I've been down to, level 3 with Phil listening to the band." And that answer did not appease her very well. And then tempers flared and we got in an argument. And that was the night that I pretty much left the house, because all during our dating, 5 years of dating, we would break up several months at a time, get back together, break up, get back together. And I told her, I said, I just can't see doing this the rest of my life. And so, yeah, that was a pretty bad scene. Both of us had been out partying, egos got involved, fears got involved. We didn't know how to communicate and running around with our single friends. That's not a good idea for a couple that's got a child and in a marriage, running around partying with your
Sure.
single friend.
Now I know you had shared that the police got involved because my mom sent me to jail a little more recently for, she accused me of trying to cut her head off, and then you had shared with me in the past when we first connected there some years ago. You had mentioned that she had accused you of something of that nature, and then what did that look like, or was that the circumstance that you're just describing?
Okay, I'm not sure if I understand the question, but she did elevate and escalate the situation, got your grandpa involved and got the police involved and said that I had thrown her down in the hall and kicked her in the head with my boots and a lot of other accusations that were not true. That kind of put
Right.
me on the ropes because once an accusation's made, then. And your mom's beautiful. She was a beautiful young woman, and she could win the hearts and souls of many a men. And so, yeah, I was kind of at a disadvantage right there.
Right. You went to jail for
I
that?
didn't
Or
did
was
not
that
go
how
to
that went?
jail because there really was no physical evidence or anything. So it was just agreed that I should go stay somewhere else that night. So I went to some friends' houses.
So, I mean, so the question was, did the police get involved? Is that the circumstance that, I remember you had mentioned? And that is it, right? And I have found it peculiar over the years that mom has accused yourself, me, her 3rd husband, John, her own mother, my grandmother. She's accused several people of all, like, head murder, like murder to her by some type of trauma to her head. She said that my grandmother like hit her in the head with the telephone, like a house telephone. Like it said, she tried to murder her that way, and so it's always peculiar, or at least I had always wondered like why did she always like go back to that, right? Why did she always accuse people of the same type of end result murder, and also by like some kind of head trauma with a device? Mine was cutting her head off with a knife. But so, mom she is feisty, to put it lightly. She is, and she runs, she's a very angry person. But I love how you perceive her these days. And you had said you consider her to be a sick friend. Now, is that something is that a that you have worked on over the years? Because it seems like a very thoughtful expression.
I have worked on that over the years and continue to do so. I know I had a lot of trauma growing up, abandonment issues and betrayal issues. So hurt people hurt people. So when she was trying to hurt me, she just didn't know how to communicate that me leaving her hurt and that she was hurting. So as myself and many people I know, we respond to hurt with anger. So
Yeah.
I know that she's beautiful inside and out, and I hope one day that she can find recovery as well because it's a beautiful life when you can turn your pain into purpose, and you can understand that I don't have to have resentment towards any of the way that she's treated me, talked to me, or like the time I drove all the way down there to take you to go see the movies, and she changed her mind and changed plans and yeah, it took me a long time to get over that because it made me mad. So to be able to live free from those emotions, I had to understand. I had to pray for her. I pray for her and understand that she's not a bad person. She's just a sick person, and I hope one day that she can find her way to getting well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's tough because it seems like a long shot at this point just because of it doesn't appear to me that there's a whole lot of evidence of her making any progress. And now I know, and I believe that you share the same opinions that God can do it. He can, but also truly believe that there has to be an initiative on anybody's part that wants to get better. There has to be an initiative, and I do also pray for her that that initiative, that she'll make a move, she'll take a step in the right direction. I do pray for that. I've asked myself too, like, what would I do if she just called me up and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm not well. What comes next?" I've gone through that thought exercise of what would I respond? What would I say? Would I be able to? Those are tough questions. And actually, like I said, I do pray that that would happen. I don't know. Of course, we never know how these things could unfold, but yeah, she is sick. And I appreciate and can see the development in you and exactly how you express yourself, because this is a new relationship between you and I. So as we continue to have conversations, I am very proud of the work that you've done, because you can see it. I could see it. Other people could see it. You could tell when somebody's worked on things thoughtfully, and it's clear that you have. It's clear that you have done that purposefully. But so now you left my mother, but that's still before the 1985 line in the sand, or maybe not line in the sand, because I don't think it went that smoothly, but like, the that first initiative, as I was just mentioning, that was when you first realized and started making some moves. And so because I know you didn't get sober right then and there, right? So like, what did the rest of that look like for you in your substance use, and also your recovery efforts?
Well, when I went into treatment the first time, my ass was in a sling and I didn't have anywhere to live. My using had gotten to a point where even my roommates couldn't handle me anymore and told me I had to find somewhere else. I wasn't making my truck payment, so it wasn't going to be long. I was going to be on my feet again. And I was in a laundromat, and being raised by my grandmother, um, it was a Southern Baptist home. And but aside from getting whipped all the time, I mean, she's a strong believer in spare the rod, spoil the child, but those consequences never really mattered to me. So she would use hellfire and brimstone to try to change my behavior. If you don't stop that, you're going to go to hell. So I didn't reach out to God, because God, God and I, that wasn't an option. I had been hardwired to believe that I'm going to hell and that I've got to figure this out. Very much like you, my dad had left when I was 3, and there goes some more abandonment issues, and I was left to figure this out on my own. So I was in the laundromat. I saw in a Bargain Mart magazine a little prayer. It said "Novena to a Holy Spirit." Didn't have the word God in it. And so it said, if you pray this prayer 3 consecutive days, a favor will be granted. Okay, what's in it for me? I'm willing to give it a shot. And the prayer goes, Holy Spirit that rights all wrongs and lights the path that I may attain my goal, who gives me the divine power to forgive and forget all evil against me. I want in this short prayer to reaffirm I never want to be apart from you in spite of material illusion. May I be reasonably happy in this life and eternally happy in the next. I remember that very well, because on the 4th day I was in treatment, because I was like, well, am I going to get my truck back? Am I going to have somewhere to live? What's going to happen to me? And so when I went into treatment, it seemed like the fix all. Okay, this is going to fix everything. I've just got to do some work. So once I got straightened out, I'm like, whoo, I'm glad that's over with. And so once everything got settled down, I stepped out, decided I could run the show on my own again, and tried some controlled partying. And yeah, my disease of addiction had progressed quite a bit. And so I was off to the races again. A lot of it had to do
Yeah.
with everybody I knew partying. So
Well, how long did that stint go for? Like, how long were you sober on that?
a little over a year, but I hadn't changed. I hadn't made necessary changes in my life. And so I didn't change playmates, playgrounds, playthings. I was trying to make recovery fit my lifestyle instead of my lifestyle fitting recovery. And
Wow. Say that one more time, because I love
Okay.
that. You say it one more.
It failed because I was trying to make recovery fit my lifestyle instead of changing my lifestyle to fit my recovery.
Wow. Yeah, and I think that that is speaks to whether or not you're all in, right? And I think that I also had, like, more serious steps or efforts in, recovery, is in some in the early stages were rather pitiful,
Right.
right? Like, I guess it started with like, okay, well, I'll be sober for a month and that'll let me know that everything's okay. And as I had little efforts like that, and then things got more serious. And then as things got more serious and I was unable to deny any longer that I had a serious problem. And then, those recovery efforts also piss poor many times in the beginning until I became serious enough about the decision about recovery before I was dead serious. I mean, as serious as a heart attack this needs to happen. And when that happened, that was when I really started getting some traction. And so you had lasted a little over a year, on that initial kind of sobriety stretch, and then you had, it snuck back up on you, right? And you started, trying to make both work. I'll still be able to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, which is just not an option. But I guess, how bad did things get, in the course of the next several years?
Well, when I had a couple of overdoses, that was the motivating factor. I went to treatment a second time, and this is when I was still living in Florida. And so I went into a new treatment center down in Kissimmee, out in the swamp, and it was pretty good. I learned a lot down there. And so in one of the groups that I was a part of, they asked about who all had any cocaine induced seizures. And so everybody in there, because that was the group we were in, developed a nasty little cocaine habit. So everyone in there raised their hand, and Super Dave, my counselor, said, "Okay, how many people's had two cocaine induced seizures?" And just a few of us raised our hand. And he said, how about 3 times? Anybody in here ever had a third cocaine-induced seizure? Nobody raised their hands, and he gave us the little golden nugget that people don't survive a third one. The body is just not designed. Your neurological system just cannot cope with 3 cocaine overdose like that.
Sure. So he had shared with you, like he kind of knew the answer to his own question, that there isn't going to be anybody raising their hand because people don't make it past that second one or be able to endure the third. And seizures are nasty because I had several of them coming off alcohol. And I remember the one, Rachel, my sister, half sister, she had called the paramedics. And when I had come to, my leg was underneath the dresser. So my foot had broken, just rattling underneath that dresser. So I broke my foot. I had defecated and, urinated all over myself. And I mean, there was probably 5 or 6 paramedics all around me. And when I looked up or kind of opened my eyes or maybe realized consciousness, I was like looking around and I said, I had a seizure, didn't I? And then they said, you have a problem. That's exactly what they said. They didn't say anything else in between. They didn't answer yes to the seizure question. They said, you have a problem. And they said, we're going to help you up right now. And then we're going to see about working on that problem. Now their efforts were pretty fell on deaf ears, but I just remember that process of the seizure element being a reality. I know it had instilled a lot of fear in me that perpetuated my use. So how did you carry that fear of the third and decisive seizure? How did that affect your behavior, or how did you carry that information?
Well, I went on to get 13 years of continuous abstinence from all mind-altering substances, but my addiction turned to other things, women being one. So, I was still acting addictively, just not on something that was gonna kill me, which,
Okay.
truth be told, women will kill you just as quick as drugs will, so So anyway, I just transferred my addictive tendencies to other things. To this day, I have to be careful because I'll overdo it in the gym, and I'm still a big foodie. I love good food, and once I get started, I have a hard time stopping. I graze all day, you name it. I've been out of a relationship for a year now, be a year in February, and spending that time to go deeper on that self work, and also was motivated to do some of the suggestions that the 12 step programs offer. And in that was the inventory process. So I took a look at myself to figure out who I was because I was like a chameleon in survival mode from the time I moved down to Orlando from Roane County, Tennessee. Was just in chameleon mode. Who do I need to be in this particular situation to either survive the situation or get what I want or get what I need? So finding out who I was part of the process. Doing that 4 step inventory. And I've done it a couple of times, and it gets a little deeper each time that I'm learning things that I didn't recall the time before when I worked those steps.
That's amazing. Realizing how much work you're doing and still doing. And that was one of the first phrases when we hit record is that you were mentioning that it's still going on and you're quite aware about how much work is happening. I'm very proud to say that you are my dad and you're still working so hard at being better. Right. And now I didn't go into the rooms. I didn't do that. I know I never worked the steps either. I went about it a different way. Some of the similarities, though, most certainly are the addictive nature, not just between the two of us and what's in our blood, but most or all addicts really of having, you know, that characteristic trait of or lack thereof moderate behavior. Now, I have been a proponent for harnessing that energy and then using it for something valuable or something that's not selfish, right? Those are the two variables that I speak about a lot as being necessary for an addictive nature to be viewed as good, right? Because when abuse is involved, there's no value to anyone, and it's an entirely selfish process. I mean, there's not a 1 ounce of thought for any other people than your own self when it goes down your own throat, goes in your own nostrils, right? There is nobody else in your thought process. And so then those are the two things, is the addictive nature or the addictive actions that you're taking now, are they valuable? And then, are they for others? And then, if you really dig your heels into something with that tenacity that an addict has, all of a sudden you've got a beautiful pursuit. And so I do think that your work it's very clear that you're really serious about becoming better. And I also share those same things about eating, the gym, whatever it may be. There is no real off switch once I kind of catch fire for something. Now, tell me a little bit more about that. Though, whether you said the 4 step, I truly don't know. I'm ignorant. I've never done them. And then you'd said it's tracking an inventory of yourself, or is it like thinking about the past? What does it look like?
Uh, Yeah, and before I get into that, let me say I've read your book and I respect your recovery approach too. There's more than one path to the top of the mountain. And whatever works for anyone, I never bash or criticize whatever works in another individual's life. You don't have to become a member of a 12 step group. I know people who have had much success in their life and turned their lives around and have comeback stories with different modes of recovery. So, yeah, hats off to you because we've shared pictures and photographs, and I know that you're a very motivated person. You have good reason to recover, that's for sure. And now that you're a father, man, I'm very proud of you and what you're doing with your life and breaking that family curse because it seemed to have been a family system that just was going to keep repeating until somebody stepped up and said, "Hey, you know what? This isn't how it's going to be from now on." Don't have to accept that as being reality. So the 4 step inventory is took searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, and it's good and bad. It's not beating yourself up and listing all the horrible things that you've done. It's doing an inventory and listing resentments. This is and when I listed all my resentments, okay, I'm going to list all the resentments I got about the IRS, about my boss, about my son's mother, about everything, because that was my problem. And I believe that my disease was trying to protect me from things. It was kind of a survival thing. And so it was trying to protect me from all these things that I had resentment, because if the world would just change, I would be a better person. I wouldn't have all these problems if everybody would act right. Well, the 4-step inventory is turning that around and looking at what was my part? What did I do? You know, it doesn't matter what someone else does, the offender, forget that. What was my part in it, and what was the exact nature of my wrong? What made me do that? What was the root cause? Doing a root cause analysis, uh, on my fears. Was it fear? Was it lust? Was it anger? Was it greed? Was it what character defect was I acting out on, and identifying those defects of character so that I could recognize those and learn how to, over time, replace them with a spiritual principle.
Okay. Yeah, that's the responsibility. And to my understanding, that's an element of my mother that's lacking because she's still living in that phase, or however you want to describe it. She's in that part of life where it's everything is outside of her. The faults, her issues, her problems, it's all coming from outside of her. Everything life happens to her always. And so that perpetuates the victim mentality that keeps her shackled. And so, to hear that you're doing this inventory to assess your own responsibility in your life, so there are elements of life that happen to us, yes, but to understand that there is some responsibility on some kind of level that we need to address. And the best part is that responsibility, once identified, is actionable. It's actionable, and that's where you begin the work. And you cannot begin the work if it still stays outside of you. You can do nothing about everything you had mentioned, the IRS, my mom, whatever. You can't do anything about it.
Right.
So the only thing that's truly actionable is the elements that you have responsibility for. So it's a great place to start. In fact, I think it's the only place to start. Historically, Solzhenitsyn, the author of the Gulag Archipelago, he was imprisoned by Stalin. And so the Gulag Archipelago, which I have not read, full transparency, you've got to have some serious fortitude. It's like 800 pages written by a Russian guy in prison. And he was very smart. So it was very hard. It's a hard read. But what the point that I extracted was from that piece, or his literary work, which has changed communism, it's changed governments, it's changed a lot of people around the globe. And it's that he could have blamed Stalin. Of course, he could have blamed Stalin. He was falsely imprisoned in a communist nation, but he didn't blame Stalin. He blamed himself, and he started working outrageously at some, morsel of responsibility for him being locked up in a Soviet country. Right? It's like it's crazy, but that's where he started to work from. And so I think it's absolutely glorious that you haven't done this process just once. I mean, how many times that you're saying you're doing it a third time?
I can't recall. I've got notebooks full of step work that I've done, and each time it has a different meaning to me at what phase of life that I'm in. And now, being 65, in the evening of my life, my values and my morals and my motivations and inspirations are different than they were when I was 45.
Sure.
So I've done it several times.
So is that what you do? Like you do the 12 steps, you work through them, and then, at any other point in life, you just start over? Is that how?
Well, the steps started working me. I began intuitively reacting to situations that I never knew how to deal with before. And so, when I took that first step, powerless, this last time 12 years ago, I got arrested for driving with a .24 blood alcohol content. So 12 years
That
ago.
0.24 blood alcohol, 0.24 blood alcohol level, and you were still operating the
Oh,
damn
sure.
thing?
I demanded a blood test because I told them I am not drunk. I just had an accident and flipped a pontoon boat that I was trailering, but I insisted on my sobriety. And so we went to Methodist Medical Hospital in Oak Ridge and they drew blood. And even the phlebotomist said, "Why are you in here? Why are you doing this?" I said, "This guy thinks I'm drunk." She says, "Well, you don't seem drunk." I said, "Tell him, will you? That's what I'm trying to tell this guy."
That's what happened.
So I had a very high tolerance and I was very functional. I mean,
Yeah.
I was doing quite well, so much so that I maintained my innocence all the way up till the time the blood test came back. And my attorney
Right.
said, "You need to just be quiet. Yeah, you
Sure.
had a point two
Sure.
four, dude. You're kinda guilty." So the
So, so
unmanageability. I'm sorry, go ahead, son.
well, I was just saying, you've worked these steps several times, and then you mentioned the steps are working on you. And, I love that you told that story because I have another inquiry about some of these escapades. And maybe I'll just ask that question because before I forget, but you had told me, and I had mentioned on this show that you're a drug trafficker.
Kind of a warehouse. A warehouse, so, kind of a climate controlled storage facility, if you will. I justified and rationalized that I was not a dealer. I didn't deal drugs. I had a I had a ton of drugs when I went into that second treatment center, because I had enough. What it was, I was warehousing and moving stuff for a dealer, and I was given all the free head stash that I wanted. All I had to do was say, "Hey, can I have another 8 ball?" "Sure, no problem." So I was allowed to do as much cocaine as I could do, and that's what took me down was because with not having that stop button and just using it, even when I didn't plan on it, you know, uh, that's what led to my overdoses and ultimately my recovery.
Sure. So you called yourself a warehouse. Isn't that funny? I appreciate your creative articulation. You know, I use that too. I had that gift, and now I know where I get it from because I mentioned, I enjoy alleyway commerce, right? Like I enjoy and I always liked that element of it too. In addition to the narcotics biologically affecting me the way that I wanted them to, I also enjoyed the adventure of getting out there and, I'm in a new city, I'm in a new country, and I'm like, oh, hey, like I want to start that conversation. I really enjoyed that adventure element of it.
The lifestyle was as addictive as the chemical itself. The
Sure.
thrill of the deal and always on the edge. Is it gonna go down right? Is it gonna go down wrong? And all the variables that could happen. And when you watch Miami Vice as much as I did, it was like, you were aware of the dangers, but again, it's just like when my grandmother would whip me. She'd take the belt and wear me out. Consequences never really altered my decision making. It's like, cause I was going to hell, right? So it was like, what consequences? I'm going to hell. What could be worse than that? So, if I get shot, if I get arrested, what difference does it make?
Sure.
So out of that first step being powerless over whatever, and it doesn't matter. AA says powerless over alcohol, which is a limited term. So NA uses addiction, which is broader and more encompassing. There's as many 12-step groups as there are Overeaters Anonymous, Sex Anonymous. There's a lot of people who have adopted the 12. Now, the second part of that first step is our lives have become unmanageable. So to this day, something that and you said it very well, anything that's outside of me that's causing me to be ill at ease that I have no control over, I'm powerless over that. And if it's causing me to make decisions that aren't productive to my life, then that's making my life unmanageable. So it doesn't really have to be a substance or anything else like we talked about. It could be gym, women, food. So yeah, that I don't know what got me going down that rabbit hole. But let me say this about when I found out I wasn't going to hell. This is where I found the rooms of the 12-step fellowship to be very beneficial because I got to listen to these people, and you can rely on anything an addict says about themselves. You can't make this stuff up. Why would we? You know? So I'm putting stock in what these people are sharing with me. And they're telling and I'm listening to them talk about how they have found forgiveness. They have found a higher power. And, it doesn't matter what label you put on that. You can't drink the word water. Uh, so it doesn't matter what label you put on that divine entity as long as it works for you and that it's greater than you and it's loving and caring. So that gave me the ability to believe if they can find forgiveness, I can find forgiveness. If they can pray, I can pray. And no one ever told me that I was praying wrong or believed wrong. They allowed me to practice my recovery in a way that worked for me, not impose their recovery on me, just like I don't impose my recovery on somebody else. If my pain can prove a purpose and help someone to recover, well, then that's just a bonus.
You're in the rooms a lot. I mean, daily, sometimes more than once a day,
Yeah,
right?
I go to 2 meetings on Sundays. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a
In the newest
I'm sorry?
tell us about the newest one, the Children of
Oh, the
Alcoholics,
Adult
I think?
Children of Alcoholics is a wonderful group. They have a laundry list that they read, and the first time I attended one of their meetings, which hasn't been very long ago, in the first 5 minutes when they were reading the laundry list of adult children of alcoholics, I was crying because I was identifying so strongly with and these are people who some of them never done a drug or drink. And maybe there wasn't drugs and alcohol in their homes, but the dysfunctionality and the traumas that they experienced through either abuse, neglect, things that were done or things that were left undone has caused them to have difficulties in their adult lives, carrying on those
Now
systemic traits.
now you and I just started talking again. When I say again, I mean, I don't know if we could really have ever qualified us as talking ever. We've had, pretty much, no relationship, and for the record, I'm not upset about that. I'm very glad that I would like to say, and I don't wanna speak for you, but there's no real animosity about the past, and it's more about, well, what can we do now? So now we try to talk once a week, and we're trying to move in the right direction for the remainder of our lives. I mean, and so I really appreciate that we don't have a lot of animosity about the past, and we both share the desire for a different future, right? Because I just don't think that there's a lot of value in just even though we're talking about the past now, about beating each other up about what may have happened or didn't happen, or I try not to think about that too much. Truly, right? Like I don't really carry any animosity about how things had unfolded for the both of us in our relationship. But I have a question. And now you've just started going to the Children of Alcoholics, right? That's a new thing. Right. Do you how do you connect that participation in that room with you and I?
Being able like when I woke up that morning and you had texted me, it'd been a couple of years. We had shared a living document on Google Docs and was writing, and we'd shared some pictures when you were in that coma before you went back years ago, and then we just kind of faded off. And I think that's a Penley trait. Really no reason. I didn't know why or question. I just did what I had to do. So identifying my own feelings and working on me, this ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics, is giving me another tool, another set of tools to identify those traumas, like when mom and grandmother would get into a fight. And all of a sudden, me and mom got to find somewhere else to go, and she drops me off at my aunt and uncle's. And now all of a sudden, I got abandonment issues. Is mom coming back? Is she not coming back? Things like that. It helps me. And where you and I are concerned, my dad not being around from the time I was 3 years old, and me not being around from the time you were just past 1 years old. I've been on both sides of that coin, and I can empathize and I can identify with the self work I'm doing on dealing with my abandonment and betrayal issues and understanding how you must feel. And to have your love and acceptance, regardless of the past, and not blaming, like, where were you, dad? Because I was resentful at my dad for a long time. It was his fault that I turned out the way I did. And
Mm,
again, like you had said before, anything outside of me, it's inside me. The only thing I can do anything about is me, my attitudes, and my responses to life as it comes at me. So I had to forgive your dad, or my dad, your grandfather. And so it's given me just an understanding, like where you broke the family system curse there for your son, for your wife, and being there for your family and allowing me to be a part of now. I love our video chats. I love the level of involvement, and I'm just grateful for that, because when I do my inventory and I look at what I've done and look at what my part is, I'm very humbled and very grateful to have this place in your life, because I don't feel like I did anything, and I did nothing to deserve it, but being able to just accept it was pretty difficult. And I don't know how the ACA, because being fairly new in that, directly affects you and I, but the overall recovery process and the steps and the self work that I've done and the self work that you've done, because reading your book, watching your podcast, and that you having that understanding of addictions and comeback stories and the work that's involved and the work that you've done on yourself without blaming me or your mom. I mean, man, you were the odds were against you. I mean, they were. You had a rough way to go, man, and you've done it. You've become successful without blaming, taking responsibility. So I'm very proud of that.
it's interesting because you had mentioned that you did the last time we quit speaking because I was struggling in recovery. I was struggling. I was failing more than I was succeeding. And I wasn't having too many sober days in between using. And so that could explain some of the lack of communication. However, you know, you had mentioned how you just kind of left it there. Right. And so I think that there's always this assessment of whether or not we want to carry energy from the past or not. And I had mentioned to a friend of mine before reaching out to you this last time, I had mentioned to him, I said, I don't really have any reason to be upset with my dad. I mean, I don't, and I truly mean that. Like I didn't have any real good reason not to reach out to you. And then he said, well, then why haven't you? And I said, I just haven't gotten around to it, I suppose. But like, it's a good thing that it's a good thing that I didn't have any weight to the past. I didn't let it carry too much weight in what I do next. Right. Because I think that that's what gets in a lot of people's way is that they've let the circumstances or the outside world carry too much weight in what they do next. And so then a lot of times they don't do anything and they just remain the same. And a lot of times they get themselves into a worse scenario by letting that weight that they're carrying from the past affect them negatively through fear or anger. And so I think that this is where my mom is at, right? She just carries, I mean, all her past, it just carries so much weight into her current self, right? It just affects everything that she conceives or perceives. And so then what ends up happening is that either no action takes place or there's a lot of anger and so it's tough. It's tough. And I'm really grateful that you and I both don't let that affect us from picking up the phone or having the conversation because I think it really hinders a lot of people in becoming better or getting to where they want to be, right? By letting that past carry too much weight, it just shuts the whole damn thing down. And so I'm super grateful for that. I'm happy for that. So, like, tell everybody what your life looks like, because honestly, I've bragged about it, right? Like, I know you being my dad and some of the traits that I have clearly gotten from you. Like, I look at your life, I'm like, man, that's when I feel the best, is when I'm kind of living how you're living at the current moment. So, like, what does it look like for Wade Penley?
Well, I do some service work. I try to give away what was freely given to me. I love it, and identified when you said you went to Colonial High School to speak to those kids. I've gone into jail and tried to carry the message of recovery, because a lot of the guys were like me. They didn't know they had a choice. Everyone think, why do you always take the hardest path? As if I saw two paths to take. So just letting everybody know, hey, there's another way. There's another path. And besides that, I get so much gratitude when they come in wearing the leg irons and the jumpsuits, and it helps me to remember where I came from. Because if I forget that, I will return to it. So I've been doing some service work, and that's why I'm still involved with the recovery, the 12-step rooms. It's a sense of community, and to be able to turn my pain into purpose and share with someone what my experience with finding God again when all was hopeless, and try to help them up and try to help others. Just like, I'm studying for certified personal trainer through NASM. And man, what a course. That thing is wearing me out. Like, what have I got into? It's a very good course. But anyway, to be able to help people and target people who are my age, who have stenosis of the spine, who's had a broken collarbone, who's got arthritis, and to be able to help them achieve a higher level of health to enjoy their lives. And so it's a threefold thing: spiritual, physical, and mental, that I try to come together with in my gym work, my step work, and I do love to read. Try to keep those neurons firing in my brain, and if you don't use it, you lose it. So I'm trying to stay active. The timing of you reaching out the last time that I woke up and you said, "Hey, pops, Uncle Ronnie died, and you're a grandfather." I'm like, wow. I guess we got to get caught up on a few things here.
Right, right,
But at
right.
that point, I was just running on the hope, because being an orphan, my mom and dad passed away. But, not being in a relationship, the last 2 years have been kind of tough, because, recovery isn't always warm and fuzzy. Sometimes it's bitter and painful. Job losses, having to go through bankruptcy, and so many things that could just said, you know what, this isn't working. It isn't worth it. Why even continue on? I just had to, in blind faith, turn my life and will over to care of God as I understand God, and trust in His timing. So with you and I, how that applies with you and I is, I just made myself ready for the opportunity when you were ready. And so when I got that text from you, I'm like, wow, this is awesome. I did not see that coming 2 years ago or even 3 years ago. I don't know what God's will for me is. I'm pretty sure what it's not, but what I do is try to detach my expectations from what I think God's will for me is. And I know it's not to go to hell now, thank
Right.
goodness, or thank God. And so when I'm turning my life and will over to the care of God, I have to remove my attachment of what I expect it to look like, or else I'm going to manipulate the outcome to look just like it, what my thoughts
Sure.
are, and
Or
try,
you
or try at
manipulate it,
least.
and then that's a humiliating process. You're like, "Man, I missed the mark. I wasn't even close on this one." Well, that's, I just I really appreciate, you know, who you've become, and yeah, I agree that it's divine timing, and I'm sure there was several points in time in there when you had thought it would has been too long, or we've missed the chance, or, you know, it's over, or that's not gonna happen. And so that is a part of having faith, is that, man, timing is something that we do, right? God is the Alpha and Omega, right? It's all of time. So the whole concept of how it's all linear and we move on a timeline, that's all us. And so then our minds also attach all these milestones and we're like, it's been too long. Or has it? Like, according to you and your brain, and even from person to person, those timelines are different. It is a blessing. It is a blessing that we've gotten to reconnect and be at the place that we're both in. Because the stages at where you and I both are in life are celebratory. It's a great thing. And it's a great thing. I know that it's a big deal for my wife Kathleen, and then of course my son Seth. You know, and you and I are kind of like that. We're kind of like lone wolves, right? So to see how excited my wife is that my son has a grandfather, it's not hitting my radar too much, right? Because I'm like you. I can just be by myself and read and I'm all good. But to see the effect it has on other family members in a positive way, to know that as a family we've managed to grow a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. And so now we've got a grandfather on board and on the staff. And so, I mean, it's been glorious. And so I want to say thank you for that for sure. Well, I know that this is a show and not just dad and son talking here. So if you had right, well, I'll put it to you like this: what's one nugget that you're going to tell your grandson Seth when he's maybe 14?
When he's
14?
14,
I'm just throwing a number out there, but he's coming into being a man, and he needs a nugget of wisdom from his grandfather. What's it going to be?
that who you are is not found outside of you. You are not defined by how much you make, what you wear, what you drive. You are who you are, and that you are loved and you are worthy of a good life.
I like
Yeah.
worthy. I
You
like that.
deserve it.
And then I think
Yeah. Because I saw the world through the lenses of lack and scarcity and never feeling like I really belonged, being dropped off at different relatives' houses, going to different schools, whatever the case may be, jumping from one relationship to another, just never really feeling like I belonged anymore. So to give him a sense of belonging and of being worthy and that he is loved and you've had to do it. I'm doing it now, being my own parent, having to father myself from not having a father to be there for me. So yeah, I think he's got a great start in that you are very involved in his life and have all the experiences that you've had in recovery to where he's going to benefit from both our pain so he doesn't have to find out and figure it out on his own. So that's a beautiful thing.
yeah, that's and it is. I have grown appreciative of the communication from Father in heaven. Now you, my father, me being a father, right?
Right.
It echoes. These messages echo, and it's a blessing that we're getting to share them. So, well, yeah, this has been a very unique episode of the Next Fix, guys, and I promise that my dad and I will hit record at some point further on down the road, and we'll see how this whole thing unfolds. But until then, see you on the next one.